You're listening to Three Kitchens Podcast, hosted by your favorite home cooks, Erin Walker and Heather Dyer. Join us for inspiration and a new recipe every Tuesday. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Three Kitchens. I'm Erin Walker and
I'm Heather Dyer. Hello, hello.
I'm really excited that we squeezed this interview in. We did some shuffling so we could add this in because I think this is somebody and a project that you are really going to want to listen about.
Yeah, it's a really cool project. Our guest today is here to tell us all about it. Her name is Heather Ramshaw. She's the operations manager at the Highfield Regenerative Farm.
Yeah, and this is a fantastic urban farming community. It's reusing industrial area, and then they farm it for produce that they then donate to the Alex Community Food Center that then makes fresh fruits and vegetables available to people.
That's right. And I think she said that some of it also goes to the food bank.
And the food bank, that's right.
Yeah, super interesting. Because it's an industrial area, they have to do everything in raised beds, and they've now got a greenhouse. So if you are thinking like I was, like, how do you plant stuff in the ground in an industrial neighborhood? Well, this is the way you do it. You bring it all above ground.
Yeah.
Super cool stuff they're doing with composting and optimized soil health and like really focused on the soil quality in order to get amazing food quality, which is really cool.
Yeah, the whole regenerative way of farming so that it's more of a whole loop where you're thinking of what's going in, what's coming out, and then what's going back in again so that you improve the soil and the area that you're using from when you first started. That's something that we're super excited about talking with her about. And this has only been there since 2017. And they partner with a whole bunch of other community organizations that also use the site. They have a forest school, I believe it's called.
Mm-hmm. There's people growing bees or growing bees? No, what do you say? What's the farming bees?
Housing bees?
Oh, shoot. I don't know the verb. They've got bees. I love it. Let's let Heather tell us because she actually knows what she's talking about. Big thank you to Heather and the Highfield Regenerative Farm for fitting this podcast in on short notice. And a shout out, they have an event coming up on October 1st. If you're local here in Calgary, go check it out. And you'll hear more about that toward the end of the episode. And we hope to see you there because we will be there.
That's right. Because this is all happening in real time, we're going to come back with a bonus episode later this week where we share our experience at the event Soupalicious that the Highfield Regenerative Farm is putting on the weekend. And we are going to cook and make some soups to share with you guys.
We're going to make soup because the event is around soup, and we can tell you all about the event if you weren't able to be there.
Okay.
Let's get to our chat with Heather.
Well, welcome, Heather, to the podcast. We are so excited.
Are you pausing because you think it's going to be confusing with two Heathers?
Because I'm realizing we have two Heathers. Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Amazing. Well, thank you.
So can you tell us what the Highfield Farm is and how it kind of all began here in Calgary?
Yeah, for sure. So the Highfield Regenerative Farm project, we are a community urban farm hub, and we are transforming 15 acres in the industrial part of Calgary into an active urban farm and green space. The whole project came about back in 2017. The city of Calgary identified this property as an underutilized piece of land.
Okay.
So if folks are from Calgary, they generally remember this site as the old Blackfoot Farmers Market.
Oh, okay. Right.
So yeah, back in the 90s, it was very popular for that. And then once they moved off the site, not a heck of a lot happened here. So it just kind of became overgrown. And Then the city realized there was a lot of potential here and opened a call for proposals. So anybody in Calgary could have submitted a proposal as long as it had to do with urban ag. They specifically wanted to see agricultural activities happen on this site as part of the Calgary Eats Community Food Action Plan. And a couple of years later, dealing with all the details, and the Highfield Farm project came to sign a lease with the city for this property. So that was in 2019. We partnered with the Compost Council of Canada to really move things forward. They're a national nonprofit. They have a great network all across the country. They really encourage folks to recycle organics to grow nutrient-dense food. So the values lined up really nicely, and we started working with them. And yeah, ever since we've just kind of been growing away. So we're in technically our 5th year on the property, really kind of our 3rd growing season at this point. And we work a lot with volunteers and organizations and businesses that share our values to grow food and activate the space in unique ways, and create compost and build healthy soil. And yeah, it's been an adventure so far.
No kidding. So there's
Mhm.
4 of you that came together to start the project. Is that sort of my understanding?
Yeah, there were 4 co-founders: Jeremy Zoller, Jay Fish, Jack Goodwin, and Mike Dorian. I was brought on as a staff in 2021. So I'm the operations manager, and I've been here for 3 years now, about.
Nice.
Being in an industrial area, is there like any concern with what other types of industry is happening around it? Like you can imagine things, you hear things all the time about, I don't know, like remediation that needs to be done if there were like
Mhm.
fuel tanks underground, or like, I don't know, that type of stuff. Was that ever a consideration for this spot?
Yeah, so technically we are, slated as a brownfield site. And our primary land use is, of course, industrial, because we are in the industrial area, and we've been granted a secondary land use of agriculture.
Okay.
So we do have some interesting aspects that we have to work around because of this kind of potential for contamination on the site. We've done preliminary soil tests, and there's been no red flags, but still we grow everything above ground. So
Mhm.
in the market garden, in the greenhouse, all over the site, we have kind of this barrier between the soil that was originally here and the soil that we are growing in. So we're kind of beginning this soil building process from the ground up, and trying to maintain that barrier between the earth and what we've brought in, just in case. In my personal research of this history of this site, there hasn't been any actual industry happening here, but of course we are surrounded by, we've got stand-ins on one side, and there's all these warehouses and everything around. So just being cautious of that, but we do grow everything above ground to avoid anything like that happening, any
Oh,
transfer.
okay. Oh, that's really interesting. So, can you explain to us what regenerative farming is and how this kind of fits into sort of all the definitions we hear about organic farming and sustainable farming, and sort of where that falls, what sort of practices you put into place?
Regenerative agriculture essentially is a holistic approach to growing food. So, a holistic ecosystem approach. So, as the producer, you recognize your position within the environment. It's not about taking control of the environment, it's about working with nature to produce food. And the intention is always to leave your environment better than you found it. So, of course, with kind of our conventional agriculture, large scale commercial, we're often, pulling nutrients from the soil and using synthetic fertilizers to replenish those. In regenerative ag, the soil is the main focus. So when we talk about soil health, we really are talking about the biological health of the soil. So the nutrient value in the soil is, of course, important, but the biological life in the soil is really what we focus on. And so we see that from our composting program. Our compost club creates all of our compost here on site, and they use a small batch hot composting method that really encourages the development of bacteria, good bacteria, and nematodes and fungal networks and things like that, because really that soil food web, that is what allows the plants to communicate with one another and communicate with the environment and interact and draw nutrients from where they need to get it from. So having that really nice, well-developed soil sponge is what you're after with regenerative agriculture. Generally, regenerative agriculture incorporates livestock because, of
Okay.
course, livestock animals are a very important part of our environment. Unfortunately, being an urban farm, we're not allowed to have any livestock on this site at this time. So we do what we can, of course, like I mentioned, really focus on building soil health and composting. And then in the garden, you'd see sort of different strategies like using drip irrigation to reduce our water use, covering the soil with mulch and using cover crops to really kind of give that soil food web a safe place to exist. Chopping and dropping our crops at the end of the season, so we're leaving organic matter in the soil as much as possible to feed the biology in the soil. So different things like that. Yeah, in terms of where regenerative ag falls on the spectrum of farming, of course, you've got your conventional at this point, your larger scale agriculture, which is very invasive to the environment and destructive. And then organic, which is a highly standardized practice. But of course, the attempt there is to reduce the amount of the impact on the environment. Sustainable farming, again, sustainable and regenerative, there is no stamp of approval like you have with organic. So it's really more just about reducing that footprint further. Regenerative, the growing of the food is almost like a byproduct of taking care of the ecosystem as a whole.
Right. Because the soil, from what I understand, is it all comes back to the soil that we're growing everything in. And if we don't have healthy dirt and happy dirt, then you're going to have more struggles and more impacts.
Yeah, for sure. They're always learning more about the soil. I think I just saw an article last week or a couple weeks ago that they've kind of come to believe now that 50% of all life on the planet is in the soil. So that's quite an impressive number. And it unfortunately is something that we never think about. And especially in the times of synthetic fertilizers, it's just not something that we really consider as being a key part of the system, but it really is. And again, it really comes back to the biology, because that really is its own network that interacts so much more than we give it credit for, and is entirely responsible for the health of your plant as well as the nutrient density of your food.
So the food is sort of the byproduct of what you're doing, but the soil wouldn't be what we need it or want it to be without the plant, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Soil is not much just on its own without the life, and the life is what produces the food. So it all seems to be connected. And so even though the food is sort of a byproduct, is there something else you could or would grow?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the plant matter is a very important piece of it too, right? But it's just another part of the soil food web. So when we are thinking about the soil food web, we're thinking about the bacteria that live in the soil, the nematodes, the protozoa, all of the microscopic creatures that really are a lot of mass within that. And they all have their own jobs within the soil food web. And then you have your kind of fungal networks, which really connect everything together. And so, of course, having the roots of the plants and whatnot, that is super important to have healthy soil, but not every ecosystem involves growing food. Of course, since we're talking regenerative agriculture, then we're talking about growing food as well. But when we discuss soil health, that's on a global level. We're talking forests, and we're talking agricultural systems, and we're talking prairie grasslands and wetlands and everything. So yeah, so in regenerative ag, it is kind of a byproduct, but there's, it kind of goes beyond that for sure.
So all the crops that you're growing, are they all annual crops, or do you have any perennial crops like berry bushes or things like that you're kind of growing and producing as well?
The majority of what we produce are annual, like vegetables.
Okay.
But we do have some perennials, mostly like our herbs, chives, mint, oregano, rhubarb, things like this. We just have to be a little cautious in terms of root depth. So berry bushes and trees, we're not able to grow at this point because of maintaining that separation.
Right.
Above ground.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird challenge.
Yeah.
So at this point, we're not planning for anything like that. However, in terms of the wider site, what we have done is just spread like tree mulch, wood mulch over the entire site. And that is to kind of suppress the weeds so that they're not spreading around so much, as well as provide a little bit of organic matter to hopefully start that soil building process. Since it was the old farmers market site previously, it's very much like a parking lot, like crush, clay, all over the entire
Right.
thing. So of course we have kind of our road system that we've left clear and that's where we drive on. But generally, everywhere else is covered with this layer of mulch. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see over time, like how that breaks down, and if we're seeing that is helping transition the soil underneath from this really hard packed clay into something that could be usable.
Right.
So yeah, we're a couple of years into that process, so it'll still be quite some time. But yeah, that'll be an interesting experiment for sure.
Very cool. So when you say that you produce your own compost on site, are you receiving compost from people in the community, or is this all with everything that you're growing and it's all within kind of a closed system?
If you're to accept sources of waste and produce large amounts of compost, you have to be an accredited facility, which is something that we hope to do at some point. But like, we don't take any food waste from the community or anything, unfortunately. We do use a lot of wood chips. The recipe they use is like majority carbon, which is the wood chips are a great source for that. And then a lot of weeds that we pull, leaves that fall from the trees. And then here and there, they'll use certain inputs like coffee grounds from Starbucks or brewery waste from Village Brewery. And so those super small amounts that we're doing this like really small batch composting method, we can manage, but we're not taking any external waste at this point.
Okay.
Is Highfield Farm part of a broader, say, network of similar industrial area, like urban farms, I guess? Like, are you part of a bigger network that maybe you learn from and exchange information with? And like, is this a movement or?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a couple of different networks that we like to plug into. There's the Urban Farmers of Calgary. It's a small, tightly knit group. So we're always, texting back and forth to see, if people have extra row cover or any suggestions on how they're managing with the flea beetles this year and things like that. So there's a few key players that, we like to check in with throughout the season and really support in that way. So that's super fun. And that's just in our own community. And then beyond that, we are also a good food organization. So that is the network of food-focused organizations through the Community Food Centres Canada. So the Community Food Centres Canada have food centers across the country. There's one in Forest Lawn affiliated with the Alex. And then they also have this kind of secondary network of good food organizations, which Highfield Farm is a part of. And it gives us access to learning opportunities and knowledge exchanges and different grants and resources. There's a lot of different kinds of organizations within that network. So we're not all farms by any means, but there are quite a few like urban farms or community gardening projects. So having access to that network is really nice as well, because they do like a monthly knowledge swap and we kind of go through different topics. So, and just getting ideas from across the country has been super helpful as well.
So we see on your website that you can become a member. What do members access and use at your farming site?
Yeah, so in order to keep it super accessible, we have our membership program, but there's the free membership, and that is where the majority of folks kind of plug in with us, and that just allows people to then come out and volunteer and participate on the farm. We went the membership route mostly to, hopefully create this sense of ownership, because this project is intended to be very heavily supported by the community. This kind of sense of having a stake in the project and being a member. We do have that free option, and folks can come in and participate. So they can come out and volunteer. They can come out to our events, join our clubs, things like that. And then we do offer some like higher levels, which have additional benefits, like a free workshop a year and access to our events for 2 people for free, and then additional discounts and things as well. And then we also have really important piece of our on-site membership is our grower members. So these are like different organizations and folks who wanted to be part of a collaborative growing space and are in the same kind of realm, whether that's food, community, or land revitalization. So folks like ABCBs, who keeps bees on our property and provides workshop and learning opportunities, Basil Ranch, who grows edible flowers on the property, and even, some educational organizations like Hands-On Growing and Experience Métis, who does land-based programming, and Common Digs, who runs a forest school here. So there's quite a few members that activate the space in really fun and unique ways and provides a place for our other members, our individual folks, to come out and kind of plug in with what really interests them.
That's
Cool.
fantastic. That is a really interesting community. And I like that it is on everyone else to keep it going, right? Like it's not just being propped up for them. It's for everybody to kind of join in and participate and keep it running. That's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a big property, right? It's a 15-acre property, and we have one staff. So really like having a big membership and these other folks who are super engaged and like out here utilizing the space is really, really important, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do 80% of what we do without their help. So
Yeah, that's so cool.
So you mentioned supporting the community. So where does the food go that you grow?
yeah, so right now our growing space it's about a quarter acre of like a market garden style. And then we have a 4,800 square foot greenhouse that we just started using for the first time this year. It just went up last spring. And all of those two spaces are grown with the help of volunteers and our members. So we do send food home with our volunteers. If we're doing a harvest that day, they can take stuff home with them. And then everything else, we are currently donating out to food access programming in Calgary. So we half a block away from the food bank, so we direct some food that way. But this year, our main partner in that program is the Alex Community Food Center. They run an affordable food market every week, and we direct our produce to that so that folks in the community can access fresh local produce for an affordable price.
So you've got the greenhouse. How much will that extend your growing season?
The intention, like it's designed as a year-round space, so we
Okay.
do have the potential to grow year-round. We already this year saw, even just at the beginning of the season, we saw the greenhouse extend us by, we were harvesting a month earlier than we normally would. And then not only just by being able to grow indoors and have those sensitive crops really safeguarded by being in a controlled environment,
Mm-hmm.
but by extending our outdoor season, because we can now start all of our own seedlings and really make sure that we have strong, healthy seedlings by the time May long comes around and we're able to plant out. Previous to this, we were direct seeding a lot, which is also very difficult with the raised bed situation that we have, our exposure and our water situation, which I can talk about as well, because that's also a very interesting challenge.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
If we're
Please do.
talking urban farming, and that is probably one of our bigger challenges. But water, we don't have any running water on site. So as you can imagine, that's very difficult for growing. So what we have to do is we rent a hydrant meter from the city, and we attach the box to the hydrant on the side of the road, run hoses, and fill tanks beside the garden. So we have a solar pump that pumps the water from those tanks onto the garden. The drip irrigation is great for once the plants are established and the roots are able to move around and get to that water. But when you're germinating seeds, you really want to have like a moist environment, maintained for several days, which is very, very difficult to do. So this year we were able to hook up some sprinklers because we were using a different fire hydrant that was much closer. So we could use city pressure for that. But even still, that's been difficult. So being able to use seedlings and start those in the greenhouse has been super, super helpful. That's another thing we're gonna have to figure out for the winter, because if we are able to keep the greenhouse open, then we'll have to probably truck water in, because you can't use the hydrant meter after it starts freezing. That's probably one of our bigger challenges, is water access on site, especially with having the raised beds. And we have, a very small amount of soil that we're working with essentially above ground. And so it dries out so quickly, and we wouldn't be able to produce anything if we didn't use that drip irrigation system.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the things you would never think of.
Yeah, you really take running water for granted.
And you take, I think, like the idea of growing things in the ground is a whole other, that's different, right? Because water
Totally.
does, like if it rains, water does collect and sort of sit, can pool, and which is not quite the same with a raised bed or a pot or whatever. Like even in our backyards, you got to approach things differently. So
Yeah, for sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll take a quick break and come back to talk about an event that's happening this weekend at the Highfield Regenerative Farm.
So Heather is about to tell us about a really cool event that the Highfield Regenerative Farm is putting on next week here in Calgary. And we love promoting these fun local events, especially when they're foodie focused.
Is there something going on in your community that you want our listeners and us to know about?
We would love to hear about it and let our listeners know about it.
If you're interested in promoting your event through our podcast, go visit our website or email us at threekitchenspodcast@gmail.com. And it all seems to be around food.
How did that happen?
For some reason, we just love food.
Oh, so speaking of loving food, you have an event coming up this weekend. We're squeezing this one in so that we can let all our local people here in Calgary know about an event. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so on Sunday, October 1st from 11 to 2, we're having our third annual Soupalicious. So Soupalicious is an event in support of Plant Grow Share a Row, which encourages folks to grow food for donation to their local food access programs. So this Soupalicious Calgary is a fundraiser for the farm, since we donate all of our food to these programs. And we like to have a lot of fun with it. It's kind of our combination, like harvest, end of season, party, plus soup focused fun. So we match up local chefs and farmers to create different soups. So the farmer provides a feature ingredient that the chef gets creative with and then showcases their own culinary talents and makes a delicious soup. So day of, you come and you can sample all these soups. This year, I think we'll have 12 different soups to sample. Some awesome pairings like the Light Cellar and Basil Ranch, Root and Regenerate Farms, and Fresh with Fresh. We've got ABCBs and Proof, and our standing winners, Donna Mac and Micro YYC. So some really awesome pairings of local chefs and farmers. And really, it's just about kind of getting to know what food is grown in and around Calgary, because a lot of folks don't realize that, what we really can grow, since we do have such a short growing season. But folks are growing food all over, and so many creative chefs out there that are excited to, work with this local produce and really bring it to life. So yeah, it's kind of like a friendly competition and a harvest celebration, and just an opportunity to get to know some of the farmers in the area and really kind of appreciate the food that's grown in Calgary.
Well, we can't wait. We have our tickets. We're ready to go.
Yay!
Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll be there.
Awesome. That's so great.
And since we're talking about soup, do you have a favorite soup?
Okay, that's a great question. I actually am having soup for lunch today.
Oh, look at your mason
right
jar.
here.
Mm.
And this one is really good. This recipe I just got from a friend. It is a roasted tomato coconut masala soup.
That sounds
And it's
good.
so good. I've had it for lunch for the past week. It's really, really good. I'm actually at the end of it now, and it's very sad. But essentially, it's roasted tomatoes and a ton of roasted garlic and coconut milk and masala spices, which I never would have considered putting in a tomato soup, but it's really awesome. Yeah.
That sounds good. Erin, do you have a favorite soup? Put me on the spot.
Oh man, you didn't tell me you were gonna ask me what my favorite soup is. I really like the Italian lentil soup that I make. It's got bacon fried up in it, and it's got lentils and tomatoes and carrots and celery and onions. And in a good year, all those fresh vegetables get to come from my backyard garden, and it tastes so good. It pairs great with bread. So that's probably my favorite that I make.
That's the best part about soup, actually, is eating bread with it.
Yeah, exactly. And Erin's a really great bread baker, so
Nice.
you know it'll be like homemade sourdough or
Yeah, right. Of
something. Yeah,
course.
something amazing.
Awesome.
What are you?
Oh, what's mine? Okay, sorry. I love a mushroom soup, like with white wine and like
Oh,
really
yeah.
rich mushroom and thyme. And I don't know that I've ever successfully made one I really super love, but I love to eat a really amazing mushroom soup. Yeah, well, I can't wait to try the soups at Soupalicious.
Nice. The mushroom soup last year won the People's Choice Award. It
Oh,
was very good. Like
oh, I
a
bet.
oyster mushroom bisque or something like that. It was very good. Yeah, mushroom soup is delicious.
So I was reading that Soupalicious occurs in other cities as well. So it's kind of a more broad scale initiative too.
Yeah. So Soupalicious is actually a Canada-wide initiative started by the Compost Council
Okay.
and their plant grow share row program. So yeah, so there's Soupaliciouses happening all across. There's a Revelstoke one, I think, and definitely in Toronto. Yeah, they happen all over. So we are super excited to be bringing it to Calgary, always in support of improving access to local food.
Can you tell our listeners where they can learn more about the farm and follow and engage with you?
Yeah, for sure. Visit our website, highfieldfarm.ca, and there you can get your tickets for Soupalicious. And we are also on Facebook and Instagram at Highfield Regenerative Farm.
Awesome. Can't wait to go. And we'll put all those links in the show notes and link to the broader Soupalicious website as well. So if anybody in other parts of the country have a chance to go and check out in their local area, please do. And thank you so much, Heather, for joining us. This has been super interesting, and we cannot wait to visit and check out your farm.
Yeah, excited to have you for Soupalicious. Thanks for having me on.
And now for the fine print. Join us over on the socials, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and on our website at threekitchenspodcast.com. Word of mouth is the #1 way people find a new podcast. And remember, when you like, follow, subscribe, and leave a review, it helps more people find us. Thank you so much for listening. There's some stuff happening in the background at your house, Erin.
Oh shit, you can hear the nonsense?
I can hear it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.